This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have been listening to the album, the Mo, how do you pronounce it again,
Oh,
Ben?
Brave New Mundo.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is a Ben Sturdevant, who is a multi-talented, he knows a lot of multi-talented musician, and he's playing with this band. How do you pronounce it again, Ben?
Well, the band on the record is called the Midoestes.
The Midoestes. And we are so glad to have you with us here on
Oh.
WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM today, Ben.
Hi.
Okay, so the Midwesties, it kind of sounds like the Midwest. Is that
Midwest, yeah.
it is?
It's a play on that word, in fact, because it was a collaboration between myself and a group of musicians in central Brazil, in a city called Goiânia. It's about 3 hours or so drive from Brasilia. It's right in the middle of the country, very much in the flyover region of central Brazil. So it's kind of the Midwest of Brazil. And so when I traveled there and we started working together, writing these songs together, we discovered a lot of commonalities that kind of stemmed from my background, like this thing from our all being from those comparable sorts of regions in our respective countries. How about that? Even though our cultures were vastly different, they were all samba musicians and sertanejo musicians, and I'm Americana musician with a little bit of jazz background and have played drums in rock bands and stuff like that. But we were able to really find this, I don't know, communion in a way through this shared experience of not being from the major cultural centers of our countries. And so for that reason, we decided to call the band the Midoestes, because Oeste is west in Portuguese, and so we say Midwest in English in the United States. So the Midoestes is it was just the name we settled on. It was kind of fun.
And you said that there is a very interesting story about how you and these musicians came together. Could you tell us about that?
Sure. Oh yeah, it was like a very serendipitous um, thing that happened. I was randomly in Lisbon, Portugal. It was the first time I had traveled outside of the United States in probably 10 years. And I had been on just a week-long road trip with a former girlfriend in Spain. And then the last weekend we were in Granada and I had to get to Madrid. And then I ended up discovering that it was cheaper for me to fly to Portugal and back than to fly straight to Madrid. So I ended up in Lisbon just quite randomly and checked into a cheap Airbnb downtown that was hosted by some Brazilians. And in that Airbnb, I met a couple from Goiânia, Adriano and Flavia, who immediately became some of my best friends. We stayed up all night playing music for each other and drinking too much wine. And they invited me to come to Brazil. And I said, awesome, I'm coming. But if I come, we're going to start a band. And they said, yes, that's awesome. Let's do that. So I ended up there, staying in their apartment for 6 months, writing these songs and making that album. And then I brought the album back. I finished recording it in my old studio in St. Louis. And then some of them came and we toured and we have stayed in touch. And it was really a magical moment of just making a lifelong friend, just randomly out of nowhere, just poof, they appeared.
So
My life has changed.
wow, you met them in 2019, and
Yeah.
and how long afterwards from that did you start working with them for that 6 months?
Oh, I guess it was later that year. We stayed in touch via WhatsApp, just having conversations, planning, talking about it, making sure it was real, making sure that, for me, my own sense of like just safety, like, what am I doing? I'm getting on a plane, flying to a country I've never been, where I don't speak the language, to like stay with people who I've only met once at a hotel and but over time it made more and more sense and And so I went. But let me think. I met them in January, and then I traveled in, I think, September of that same year.
Uh-huh. Wow. Yes. And so you speak Portuguese, or do you speak Spanish? You don't speak Spanish, but did you learn Spanish in that 6 months?
Mm, I speak a little Portuguese, and I'm studying it now more seriously than I was, since I'm planning to return to Brazil next year to do this, to do more of this work. And I want to be more prepared. I want to be able to um, I want to be able to really communicate with people who don't speak English, which is at this point still kind of a challenge. But um, yeah, I learned a little bit of Portuguese when I was there, but mostly just enough to um, order food at a restaurant and ask where the bathroom is,
Yeah, all the
necessary
important
things.
stuff. So, in Brazil, Portuguese is one of the main languages as well.
It is the main language.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Mm. But so you and in Portugal, you were just visiting, like
Yes, that's correct.
just a tourist.
Just for a weekend, just yeah. I'd always wanted to go there, um, but I went with no intention, no plan in mind, no idea that I was going to make new Brazilian friends.
Yes, and how did you're also a Fulbright scholar? So how did that portion of this project come together?
Oh, well, so I guess let's see how to fit that into this long narrative. Uh, I was planning to go back to Brazil in 2020, but we all know what happened in 2020. In fact, if you look at my passport, it says date of issue March 6th, 2020, like the most like sad date you could have possibly have a passport issued, I think, in modern history, right? And like the week later, everything closed down. So let me think. So I gave up. I gave up on going back, and everybody's lives went their own separate ways. Other folks had more important things to do, like the guy who's a singer and guitar player in the band. He's a uh, microbiologist working studying COVID, and other guy in the band, he's a physician. Like they had more important things to do than just hang out and work on music with me. So our lives kind of went their own ways for a time. But last year, um, I I realized, I guess about a year ago, not right now, that I was in a good position to make the application to do the Fulbright, and that it was actually exactly the kind of project that organization is looking for. And I mean, I wouldn't have spent so much time on it if I hadn't believed that I had a good shot with the connections that I had and the previous work, like the album that we were already listening to establish that I could do what I was claiming that I wanted to do. Um, and so I spent 6 months writing 2 pages of text to make this application, and I just found out last Thursday that it was awarded. So I'm like super excited. My whole life.
Congratulations.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, man. My whole life has just like come together in this little crystallizing moment because of it. Feels good.
Did you so you mentioned in the application your previous work and now it's progressing to the current project. So how is the current project evolving from your original project?
Oh wow, I'm not even sure what the current project is right now. Everything is so mixed up because of these new plans and everything. Um, well, let me see. So right now I'm now beginning to incorporate more and more of this Brazilian folk instrument that I've been studying called the viola caipira. Um, it's a it's called a viola, but it doesn't look like what we think of when we say viola, like the larger violin that you think of in an orchestra or something. It looks more like a guitar. Structurally, it's like a miniature classical guitar. It's like a class. It's the guts, the bracing, the all of the binding, the structure, the shape is like a parlor guitar sized classical guitar with 10 strings on it. And they're resonant strings and it's open tuned and it sounds to me like almost like a harpsichord when you play it. But there are very like rhythmic ways and traditional rhythms called bachitas that you play using kind of complex muting of the strings with your hands. But anyway, I'm still kind of a beginner at that. But nonetheless, I love to play it and I love to write songs on it. And it's opening a lot of new ideas and new pathways for me and for my music. And I'm trying to incorporate it into sort of a live performance kind of setting. So that's my goal for the next year in Chicago before I leave on this trip is to take it out into the world and jam with it with people here and just see what I can learn, what I can teach myself, and how much I can develop before I go and put myself in the real hot seat down there.
What is it about this instrument that is so creative for you?
Well, so it's often referred to as the banjo of Brazil. It has a kind of mythological quality that, you know, is analogous, not similar, but analogous. The history of it is that it came with the Portuguese. It very much resembles a lot of instruments you see in Portugal and especially in the islands off of Portugal. Um, but it came with the Jesuits, and they essentially used it to as part of their missionary work with the indigenous populations of South America. So like the way I understand it from what I have read so far is that they discovered that a lot of the native folks were mesmerized by the sound of this instrument because they'd never heard anything like it before. And they learned to adapt the instrument to a lot of the rhythms that were already present in the music. Um, and they played it on the viola and they sang songs about Jesus. And that's how they brought Catholicism to the indigenous folks in South America.
So how did you choose this instrument?
It kind of chose me, I would say. I remember the first time I ever picked it up. I was just sitting on the back porch of my friend's house, and he had one, and he had been playing it, and I'm like, I want to try that, and I just sat out on his back porch and played it for hours, and I was discovering things I could do on it, and I was really it just spoke to me, and I decided I need to have one of these. And so on my way back from that first trip, uh, I had 4 days in Rio de Janeiro, and I decided my mission is to find a viola before I leave. And so I started trying to find music stores that I could search for one. I had in my mind, I want an instrument that was built in Brazil, that wasn't a Chinese import or something like that. And in that process, I made friends with this guy who had this little music shop, and he helped me use Mercado Livre, which is like the Craigslist of Brazil, to find one. And I met this guy in the street outside of like the Palácio de Catete, and he sold it to me. And we were playing it together in the street. And the last thing he said to me is like, "The next time I see you, you'll be king of the viola." And I took that to heart, you know. I mean, obviously it's kind of a fantasy, but at the same time, it had this kind of like resonant quality, that statement in my sort of personal mythology that I kind of like to use to I don't know, put myself in some kind of imaginary Superman land whenever.
Yeah, kind of maybe a musical trance. It seems as if this viola is has some kind of tone that resonates very much with your soul.
I think it might, yeah. Maybe, yeah. I mean, it definitely resonated with the soul of the indigenous folks in Brazil.
Mhm.
Um, but I still can't explain exactly why. And that's, I think, a major part of the inspiration for my decision to take this to the next level and to continue to study it there with the people. It is it is one of the other ways that it is described as the instrument of the people. And so it's a very like democratic instrument in a way. I think because it has a low barrier of entry. It's a open tuned instrument that basically anybody can play. You just bar the chords with one finger if you are a beginner, and it's very easy to play simple songs on it. And many of the well, almost all of the classic caipira music involves this instrument. And so if you have it, you can sing many classic songs, kind of like a guitar, but uh the I'm trying to think. I had a point I was going to make, and now it's just like oofed. Well, it is an instrument that is embraced as a very fundamental kind of part of the culture.
And when you mentioned that it's an open tune instrument, what do you mean by that? Is it that it doesn't need tuning much?
No, it needs tuning constantly, actually. It no, it's tuned into a chord essentially, and there are I think 30 or more different traditional tunings. The tuning I'm playing is called Cebalão in Hey, which means big onion in D.
Oh,
It's open D for the guitarists out there, but it's called Cebalão, and this brings up another part of why I love the instrument. It's called Cebalão because, as the story goes, when the violeiro, who's the player of the instrument, plays in Cebalão, which means big onion, all of the women weep. And so the viola is like, it's considered to be the instrument of sadness. It is the vehicle of the expression of essentially male sadness in Brazil. So of course I just completely love it because it's like it just maybe that's why it captures my soul. My soul is very sad.
Oh.
It's possible, but maybe I just like expressing it. I'm not sure. That's a good question. But much of the music, especially the caipira genre that it is a major part of, is all about the inexpressibility of male sadness. And so like you have a lot of these duplas or duos, male duos that are very sensitive kinds of people who are able to express this deep longing for things. In the case of the old caipira music, it was longing for a lost landscape, longing for a lost way of life, longing for an old country house with a gas lamp in it, and playing your songs under the moonlight before the onset of modernism. And most of this music came about during the modern period in Brazil when there was the dictatorship and they were building Brasilia and everything. And everyone was being forced into these like big planned cities, which is now kind of how their country is organized. And so there was this deep longing for this more simple way of life, and the viola became kind of the symbol for the expression of that longing.
So it was kind of a longing for pre-colonial times then.
Well, not pre-colonial, a longing for pre-modern.
Mm.
Pre-modern or mid-modern, or not, maybe pre-postmodern. How about that?
Yeah. Yes. And then I think I have heard of cebola onion, so I guess that's where it comes from.
Yeah. Cebola is the word for is the word for onion, I think, in Spanish as well, isn't it? I'm not sure. I think so. But cebolão is the like aggrandizement of cebola, big onion.
Mhm. And when you write songs, you do write songs, right? Then do you write in Portuguese, but you have a limited grasp of Portuguese?
Well, these days we have this miracle called Google Translate, and it allows you to experiment with language. And because I also have close friends who are native speakers, I'm able to, through the process of writing and I have a decent grasp of grammar and but just limited vocabulary, and I can't write clever rhymes like Tom Zé, that kind of person. But at the same time, Portuguese to me, has a lot of just beautiful sounds. And so I'm able to write, check my words in the translator, create a song, and then pass it off to one of my native speaking friends and be like, fix this, make this sound like a gringo didn't write it, please. And they can do that. So far it's worked out on the handful of songs that I've written in Portuguese. But um I I don't I don't do it very often because it's a lot of work, and I feel kind of nervous when I do it. Like I'm really exposing my myself.
But I guess you're enjoying it. You do want to do it. And then
Yeah.
is Portuguese a Romance language or not?
Yes,
It is.
Portuguese is a Romance language.
Okay.
It's very similar to Spanish.
Okay. Um, let's talk a little bit about how you started on this road, the road to music.
Oh, sure.
I think you started playing the piano at 4.
Yeah, my dad was a organ player in the 60s, and um he kind of he had followed his dream to the point that he could no longer, and then he moved back home, met my mom, and so on and so on. And then they had kids, and so they wanted their kids to do music. And so there was a piano teacher who lived down the street from our house, and they gave me a little backpack and sent me down there, starting at a very early age.
Well, did you enjoy it at that time, or was it more kind of forced on you in the beginning?
I think it was definitely forced on me. I did really enjoy making stuff up from an early age. I enjoyed getting on the piano and pretending I was, Chopin or something like that, just like playing whatever noise came to me. It's fun. Piano is fun to just bang on and make sounds on. Instruments in general are fun to bang on and make sounds on. But no, I was never a very good student. I definitely did not have the focus to learn classical pieces, and I was never as good at playing the the classics as other kids that were around me whose parents, well, no, maybe he just didn't have ADD. I think that's probably what it was. I think it was the ADD. That's what we blame it on. Anyway.
However, eventually you started to write music and you started to become interested in music very much. What was the turning point?
Um, I don't think there ever was a turning point. I think it's been pretty much consistent all along. The I started playing in rock bands in high school with my friends, and um, I think the turning point may have been when I finally had the ability to say, I want to play my songs that I'm writing. Everybody else was always writing their songs and making me play them with them. And I think, and as I was a drum set player for most of my childhood. And so, like, as a drum set player, at least in my experience, I was always getting roped into other people's projects. I was always somebody else's drummer. And
Well, they needed you.
They did, I think, but I didn't understand that at the time. For me, it was I just felt like my own will was being co-opted somehow. I'm not sure. It was very silly and immature. These days, I have a better attitude about it. But also, I think I was listening to the music that my friends were writing at that time and thinking, well, I could do this better. Why are they the ones getting all the attention? And I'm just, um, so that can kind of continued, and then eventually I discovered home recording, kind of back at the beginning of home recording. Maybe not the very, very beginning, but close to the beginning. The first, like, I mean, I had a copy of the first edition of like Cakewalk, and and like the early, I mean, I think early Audacity I was using too, like the very first versions of Audacity. And I didn't even have this was before audio interfaces were even available. I just had a sound card that had stereo RCA
That's
inputs
right.
on it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know. I started with four-track recorder.
Okay.
Did you ever use a four-track
Like
recorder?
a Tascam tape recorder or
Yeah,
something?
like a four-track recorder
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
just a cassette deck.
Yeah.
You know,
for sure.
Yeah.
I did some experimenting with the cassettes, but it was I think I just went mostly straight into digital
Mhm.
recording. Um, and I guess our high school band put some stuff out on tape, but and we had like a friend who had a nice 8-track reel-to-reel thing, brought it over. We thought we were real cool. Um,
Yeah, those were the days.
it's true. Well, these are some days too, though. You know, like I have to say, I am just blown away by the software that's available so easily now, and the types of plugins that you can find, and how nice everything sounds digitally now, and all the analog emulations and so forth. And you can make really nice stuff. And you know, I confess I have a mastering plugin that I use, and you know,
Mhm.
without any shame, you know.
So that was my next question. Are you mostly doing the computer home studio stuff, or are you going into a recording studio?
I've only set foot in a professional recording studio once, and that was when we were working on that Midoestes record. We had met some drummers that we wanted to have on the record. They lived in Brasilia, so we booked some studio time, and we all met there in this recording studio, and I had to engineer the session. I'd never done that before, and it was really scary because we only had 2 hours in the studio, but we pulled it off, and but that's the only time. Only time.
Did you get any training before you started using the equipment?
I mean, the engineer only spoke Portuguese. It's like, I just unplugged his interface and plugged mine in. It's like cross my fingers. Okay, it works. Thank God.
So,
Yeah.
so how much did you get accomplished in that 2 hours at the recording studio?
We had two drummers. One played the drum called the chimba, large carnival hand drum thing. And they recorded, and another guy played the tambourine, little not a tambourine, little other carnival drum that they kind of like play with a stick. And let's see, those guys, I think they were each on 4 tracks, so we got eight tracks done. I think each of them, they each had this way of doing one track with their shirt on, and then taking their shirt off, and then doing that track, and that would be the one.
Yeah.
That would be the track.
So it makes a big difference.
Yeah, yes, it was. Brazilians are only comfortable without shirts on.
Yeah, not as constricted.
I long to be that free. I truly do.
So that is this is the Midwesties album that you're talking about, this recording session.
Yeah, we heard some of it just a little while ago.
And how many songs are on this album?
How many songs are on it? 10 or 11, I think.
There's a lot of lots of the rhythm instruments there, like you know, the what we hear at Carnival, all that all those instruments.
The other guys who were on the record, they were all samba musicians, and
Okay.
so you know they had a group. It was called Domingo às 4, Sunday at 4. They which is when you have samba on Sunday, and when you know make the pot of feijoada and so on. And so they had a large network of musicians that were all associated with that band, and they were all very good, and you know they have those rhythms just you know in their blood, and so for me, I was just coming in and putting my spin on what was already happening, and coming up with lyrics and showing some of my background. One of the more my favorite track from that record Not really my favorite, but I think the one that is the most meaningful to me is this one that's called oh geez, what's the name of it now? Oh, Noite Estrelada, Starry Night. I didn't name it after the Van Gogh painting, my friend did. But I had shown him a murder ballad that I wrote based on Rose Connolly, um, called the Ballad of Rory McGill, which was this dystopian murder ballad about a neo-fascist state. We won't get into that, but I played him this song, and he really enjoyed it, and so he stayed up all night writing his own murder ballad in Portuguese. So it's a murder ballad sung in Portuguese to the changes and melody of Rose Connolly, which is this famous old famous murder ballad, also known as Down in the Willow Garden, you know, and it's been covered by countless people. And so I don't know, we had this fantasy happening at the time. This was the first murder ballad ever written in the Portuguese language.
Wow.
We got really excited about it. No one has ever verified that or told us we were wrong anyway.
Wow. And what was the reception of the album?
Well, the album made me a lot of friends in the north side of Chicago. That's so far that's the most objective response I can give you. We had a good tour with the album, some really fun shows, and
Where did you tour?
we started in Milwaukee. We came through Chicago, went to Lawrence, and then St. Louis, and some spots in like other spots in like Midwest, rural Missouri. Then we went east. We played a bunch in upstate New York, and then in New York City.
Were you playing at like little small clubs, large clubs,
Small clubs,
universities, or?
We did one like radio spot kind of like this in Rochester, I think, but also like small art spaces, a couple of just restaurants that
Mhm.
booked me. We did we had kind of a what's the word for it? We had a short set at the Jalopy Theater in Brooklyn. We played at Pete's Candy Store. We played where else? I can't remember. We played this really cool. The best show of the whole tour was in Buffalo, this weird place called Duende, out in this like this like I don't know. It's part of the city that had been this massive grain silo district, and they've turned it into this bizarre art installation area. And you go inside these silos, and there are these huge like suspended art projects inside these grain silos. And there's a little bar there that had music, and it was like the hip spot in Buffalo. They loved it there. That was a great night.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was super fun. Yeah, I missed that experience. That was the best musical experience of my life, really, because it was for the first time I felt like I'm in a band. But really, we're like a band, like a band. We're not. It's not like there aren't egos involved here. You know, nobody's in charge. I'm not working for somebody. We're all doing this to accomplish our own dreams together in a collective way. It was a very beautiful experience.
And did you, so all the lyrics were in Portuguese, and you were singing in the States, right? And the audience enjoyed that.
Well, yes, and not all. Some of the lyrics were in English, but we ended up doing the band kind of evolved into something like a samba rock power trio because an interesting bit of this story is that the guy who had been the main singer in the band in Brazil, his visa was not approved by the U.S. consulate, so he didn't get to come on the tour. So we had one day in Chicago to come up with an entirely different set to use for the tour.
Wow.
Which we did, and but I mean, because those guys knew a bunch of songs, but we ended up playing a lot of covers, a lot of like familiar samba rock covers, Jorge Benchor and like what else, Raul Seixas, Novos Baianos, that kind of stuff.
So you weren't able to play that many songs from the Midoestes.
We played some, and we would kind of switch the way we planned on it. Or we would trade instruments, and I would sing the songs that I wrote, and they would sing the songs that they wrote. And then we'd have a large part of the set that was just them playing their covers that they knew, and me playing drum set. Still
Yeah.
fun.
And you were the only one playing the viola?
In that band?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. I think there was one song that one of the other guys picked it up and just kind of strummed on it, but at that time I hadn't really decided that the viola, it hadn't fully embraced me yet, I think is the best way to put it.
Yes.
That came later. That came after I spent more time playing it and writing with it and just like learning more about it and studying it.
So at that time you were more of the drummer then.
I was doing a little bit of everything. My fantasy has always been to be a singer-songwriter, and the drumming the drumming was something that it's like it's a funny thing because it's like I worked really hard at getting good at it when I was a kid, and then once I had accomplished this thing, it's like be careful what you wish for. And now suddenly you have this job that you are now expected to perform for society. And I developed this real love-hate relationship with it as a part of my life because I was becoming more and more interested in playing the guitar and in recording and in writing songs and every time I was sort of asked to come back and be a drummer for someone's band, I was just kind of like, "Ah, not again. Okay, here we go. All right." There are all these pictures of me and sitting on stages in St. Louis, like behind the drums, like, "Oh, God." You know, I didn't make it. I didn't hide it from anyone, I don't think, which is maybe why they ultimately all fired me and found people who were more enthusiastic. But
Well, you have been very prolific in your songwriting. Did you write any songs with your drums?
with the drums,
Yes, for you because of writing a drum a piece.
writing a drum piece. No, I don't think I've ever done that.
Mm.
Um, that's an interesting question, and I hadn't even really thought about that. No, and I wonder why. Now that you're asking me this question, I don't have an answer, and I wonder why I never did that. Maybe it's because I never really saw myself as a drummer. I think that may have been it. Like folks I know who are like, that is their craft, that is their mode of expression, that is their art, is they express it through percussion. There are a lot of folks like that, and I know many of them, many of them are incredible musicians, and they do write incredible music that is coming from their drum playing. But for me, it was always something that was applied after the fact in order to create a groove out of an already established musical idea. So it always came after the music itself. Like for example, a song written on a guitar, the easiest example, and that establishes an idea, and then the drums come in to fill out that rhythmic idea to create a more complex, smoother groove that we can all feel more completely. That was the role I fell into as a drummer. And so the idea of writing music on drums, for drums, I was never inspired to do that. It's interesting. Maybe I should start. I did.
And how about your experience with the drum kit?
Mm.
Has that influenced how you write songs with other instruments?
I think so, yeah. I mean, just because I know what the drums will then do once the rest of once the harmonic and melodic part is kind of established and the basic part of the groove, like the strumming pattern or the finger picking pattern or whatever the sort of musical skeleton is, I'm already thinking about what kind of drum beat is going to accentuate that or how that's going to fit into the orchestration. I guess so, yeah, you're right. It's never not part of the process. If I'm planning on playing the drums myself, which I usually do. Um, whereas like I'm trying to think just of examples I think there are times when I have specifically left it out in order to free myself up to do something that wasn't necessarily groove based or rhythmic. Um, but I'm not sure if that answers your question.
When you wrote your songs, you've been so prolific. And do you use the guitar to write, or do you use the
Mostly,
viola?
yeah. Well, nowadays I'm using the viola, yeah. But for the most part, over the last many years when I've been doing this songwriting and recording, I've used the guitar to write the songs, yeah, for sure.
And how have your songs changed when you picked up the viola versus the guitar?
Well, um, let's see. The viola is, I can make kind of an analogy to language with this. So one of the things about writing lyrics in a language that you don't speak very well is that it's like you're like a child again. You're writing words like you don't know the language, and so you can you can write very innocent kind of poetry because you haven't really been exposed to the dark side of the language, right? And the same thing with the instrument. I don't know as many chord voicings on the viola as I know on the guitar. I don't know how to do certain types of chord progressions on it, and I don't have the same like hang-ups at the same time. I don't have the same kind of like I'm not playing the viola thinking, oh, I'm not as good as so and so, or I'm not writing these songs in Portuguese thinking, oh, I'm not as good as Bob Dylan or something like that. I'm just creating from this raw thing, and it feels very liberating. And even though the music itself comes out much more simply, honestly, like a lot of this stuff is three chord songs and the newer things that I've been writing, which I kind of enjoy because for one thing, it's easier to teach it to somebody, and it just feels more pure somehow, I think.
So in other words, when you start writing with the viola, you're freer, even though you maybe it's a little bit constrictive because it's a new instrument, but you're freer because you're not constrained by preconceptions. You're just experimenting and then feeling your way through.
Exactly.
And after all these years of writing on the guitar, you do have that basis in which you could just transfer over to the other instrument and then use the tone of the viola.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There have been a number of there. I really like porting the songs from one instrument to the other, and that's been fun. I have a couple ones that I've done that way. Um, but one thing though, I want to respond to one of the things you said about limitation. I actually find it to be less limiting because now it's like I have all of this new frontier to explore because there's so much more to learn. Whereas on the guitar, I it's not like I ran out of things to learn. The guitar is also an infinite land of possibilities, but I feel like it's one that's not mysterious. You can find any answer about any guitar related question through a simple Google search, and you can find 100 YouTube videos explaining how to play any complex modal thing that you could possibly imagine, or you know, and whereas the viola feels more like I'm wandering into a magical forest, which is why I really like it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to ask too. How has your subject matter changed with the viola?
Oh, well now, okay. I don't know. I mean, I'm always writing like sad songs about girls, but I think now maybe I'm I'm not sure how the subject matter has changed. Let me think about something that I've written recently on the viola. Okay, I think I'm making more of a concerted effort to write outside of my own story.
Comfort zone?
Comfort zone. Well, my comfort zone being discomfort, I think, but yeah, comfort zone. Comfort zone. Let me think about that for half a second. Yeah, I think that my comfort zone for a long time was finding inspiration in sadness, inspiration in anxiety, inspiration
Inspiration and discomfort.
in discomfort. Right, exactly. Yeah. For years, I had this well, I used to be a heavier drinker, and I would wake up every night at 3 or 4 in the morning and having just existential like horror and anxiety and I would leave my room. I would go out into the living room of my old house and I would sit and I would write these just, you know, pained types of things. And some of that stuff, I mean, I think I don't know, some of that stuff I think is still very good, but you know, the quality of the lyrics and the ideas and the sentiments they're expressing. But I'm sick of drawing inspiration from negative feelings, you know? Why do I want to spread that around? Why do I want to feel bad and then make you feel bad? It's not fair. It's not fair to you. Not fair to anybody. People want to feel good. And not that art should always make you feel good, but at the same time, I feel like to have a complete palette as an artist, you need to be able to do both, you know.
Was it the viola that lifted you out of the sadness part
The
then?
viola is definitely part of that path, I would say. It's that the viola has become a major fixture in my own, like I would say, healing journey, to use a kind of new agey sort of expression. Uh, I hope I didn't offend anyone with that. But yeah, it's been part of that journey. And the journey began with this door opening that allowed me to travel to South America and start to feel almost like I was sort of born again in the land of samba.
Mhm.
So during your dark period, your dark
Yes.
times that you mentioned,
Mhm.
what are some of the major differences between what you were writing then and how you're doing it now?
Oh, well, let's see. I think the most objective difference is that then I was living in a basement and now I'm living in a place where I can see the sun, literally. But as far as like, do you mean like the creative process or do you mean
The creative process, how you felt about it and what you produced.
Sure. Okay. I think at that time, the process itself was how I was coping with my mental health situation that I was in. It was the process itself, the being in the studio and right or taking long walks and writing these lyrics that seemed, you know, they were deeply personal and carried this what I thought deep emotional weight, and then spending hours upon hours upon hours perfecting these parts and perfecting these vocal deliveries and and the process of making the recording was like it was like almost a protective shell. Like it gave me this comfort zone, this safety sphere that I could live within. But once it was done, I would become extraordinarily depressed. And I didn't have any plans for what I was going to do with the material once it was done. Like I would spend 2 years, for example, like the last album I made in St. Louis, I spent 2 years on it. And to release it, I posted it on Bandcamp and made a little kind of self-effacing post on Facebook about, oh yeah, I posted some new junk on Bandcamp, whatever, you can listen to it if you want. 2 years of my life I spent on that, and that was how I released it. So yeah, I think now it's like the difference is I'm actually excited. I'm here. I'm talking to you guys. I'm excited to engage with other human beings outside of my protective sphere. You know, I want to be part of the community. I want to be part of something bigger than myself, bigger than my own ego, and you know, I think that's it. How does that?
Yeah, and I guess that was what inspired you to actually apply to the Fulbright program.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And this desire to really, to really, to really go into a place where I am, I am very small, and I'm learning from people who have a completely different worldview, a completely different background, a completely different set of ideas, and really opening myself to that experience. And I can also draw that back around to one of the other reasons why for me the culture of that country has been so healing for me, because Brazilians I can actually tell a story that will help illustrate this. So when I was in Brazil in January for a short time just to practice speaking and to reconnect with my friends. And the last week I was there, I spent some time in Sao Paulo, and I had asked one of my friends here in Chicago who knows a lot about Sao Paulo, hey, where should I go to see some music? And she told me some places to go. So I was there one night, and it was this incredible show. This was in January, so they're getting ramped up for Carnival. There was a whole like battery drummers there, and my street directing it, and they were backing up these guys playing covers, and I knew some of the songs. I was able to sing with the crowd. It felt so cool, you know. And of course, you know, I wasn't talking to anybody, but then eventually, a woman approached me and she said, "Do you speak English?" Just always happens. I didn't have to say anything. I just, you know, you can see I just look like I speak English. And she was, she was like, I was like, yes, well, why is that? And she's like, well, I have a bet with my friend. She thinks you're Brazilian, but I said, no, he's obviously an American. And I was like, oh, why is that? And she said, well, I live in Canada, but I'm Brazilian, and I could tell that you're American because you're closed off emotionally. This was the first thing she said to me, just out of the blue, right? I'm like, how are you looking at me randomly in a bar and then approaching me and telling me that I appear to you to be closed off emotionally? And it just is in the body language, I guess. And I don't know. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on that. And the point being though that Brazil prides itself in this openness of emotion, like of just sort of having of pouring out of passion. I believe this is a very like this is a lot of South American countries are like this. I hope I'm not offending anyone by saying it's only Brazil that is open emotionally. But uh, I for me, my experience in that country, like started to, in a way, kind of chip away at this like hard, calloused Midwestern American lack of emotional intelligence that I received from my father or whoever. I'm not sure. Hope he's not listening. But
No, but we feel that. We feel that in this city.
yeah, for sure. The walled off emotion.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you were a little bit less walled off then as you progress with this project. Somehow the rhythms or the viola affected you, or the culture of Brazil. What
I think
happened?
it's all part of it's all a big it's all a big one big picture. It's all there isn't a specific aspect of it that I can pinpoint and say, you know, this is what this is the thing that changed everything. I feel like it all just has just come together, and in a way that I just feel like I have no choice but to say yes or no to it. And at this point I'm just gonna go with it because it's fun and it feels good.
It seems to me as if you finally found your voice after all these years of writing and drumming, and then meeting these friends and then having this experience. You finally found your voice.
I hope that I'm there. I'm getting close. If I'm ever going to get there, I'm getting close, I guess. Um,
Mhm. Well, Penn Sturdevant, how would our listeners find out more about you and hear more of your music and just uh, have just know more about you if
Sure.
they have any further questions?
okay, yeah. You can look at I have a website that's just my name, www.bensturdevant.com.
Spell it.
Bensturdv as in Victor, STUDEVANT.com. And also, let's see, you can look me up on Spotify. I have 2 records on Spotify you can check out. One is called Runaway of the Earth, and then the other one is one that the one you were playing earlier, the Brave New Mundo album, the Midoestes album. And let's see. Also, I have a show on Saturday. If anybody wants to come down to Jarvis Square Pottery in Rogers Park, that's
Love
happening
it.
on Saturday.
Love it.
What time?
Doors at 7, show at 8.
Mm.
I'm playing with some good friends, the Mossy Stones. And
Is it a regular show?
like it happens often.
Yes, is it every?
No, this is actually a very unique group. I'm playing with my friend James Frost, and we have the percussionist Tommy Carroll playing with us. And I've never played with Tommy before, but I know him, and he's an incredible drummer. So I'm excited. It's going to be cool. A unique moment, I think.
We're looking forward to this show.
Oh, for real? All right. Well, hope to see you.
It's a real cool venue in Rogers Park, and it's right over in the Jarvis Square area.
Mhm.
It's just really nice. Have you been there before?
I am the sound guy there, actually.
Okay. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, that was the place where I first really connected with Chicago, and it's more or less what brought me to Rogers Park. Actually, was that I was friends with those guys, and I sort of marched in and said, "You all need somebody to run your PA, and I'm going to do that." And they were like, "Yes, please. Oh God, take this off of my shoulders."
Well, thank you so much, Ben Sturdevant, for joining us on WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. Good luck to you.
Can we get the address and the location and time of the event again?
Yeah. The event is I believe it's 1443 Jarvis, and it starts at the doors at 7, show at 8.
Jarvis Square
Jarvis
Pottery.
Pottery, yeah.
And then what date again?
Sorry, it's this Saturday, April 27th.
All right.
Okay. All right. Thank
Thanks
you
a lot.
so much. Thank
It's
you.
great hanging out with you guys.